This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 862, recorded on Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. Is this the science trap? Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we are going to fill your heads with megajoules, lasers, and golf. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Sleep. It's that thing you get plenty of until you don't. And then the world stops operating as it should. You might find the coffee maker making only hot water. Or find yourself waiting for a stop sign to turn green. Or holding a crying baby at 3 a.m. wondering, who even is this tiny human? They weren't here a week ago. In any case, sleep. Something your brain needs. That and This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki.
And a good science to you too, Justin. And Blair, how's your audio?
Blair, good science
Hey,
Blair.
how do I sound?
Oh, you
Well, so
sound
far, so
terrific
good.
so far.
Oh, great.
And welcome to everyone out there to another episode of This Week in Science. We are so glad to be here. All three hosts, hale and healthy and sounding 5 by 5. Everyone, we are here to talk about science, and we hope that you are ready to hear all about it. I have stories tonight about fusion, pathogens, and friendly lady brains. Justin, what do you got?
Well, what I got? I got a Martian laser story. Martian laser spaceship discovery. There is why it is old people don't use apps.
Appetite?
Oh, and the first humans in Europe.
First humans in Europe. All right, I'm excited about that. Blair, what is in the animal corner?
Oh, I have the latest used for spider silk, and then I have cheaters and doctors.
Cheaters and doctors. Okay. All right. I'm excited about all of these stories and more because there is so much more to come in the entire episode ahead. If you have not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you know you can do it if that's what you want to do. Head over to your favorite podcast platform and you can find us by searching for This Week in Science. We are also on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, where we stream live weekly on Wednesdays. We are TWIS Science on Twitch and Twitter and Instagram. Oh, you can find all the information about us at twis.org. Now it's time for the show. Shall we dive right in? Science! I'm going to start off with a little bit of, it's not good news. Might be. I don't know what's going to come of this. This week, the president's scientific cabinet member, the first scientific cabinet member position ever, Eric Lander, resigned after allegations of staff bullying and mistreatment came to light. And it kind of fits with Lander's past performance and ego and things that he's done. But in the president's White House, there is a zero tolerance policy for bullying. And so Lander, when everything was reported, he resigned. And so now the question is, what does this mean for Biden's science agenda? And we don't know.
This one hurts. Lander is brilliant. That's why he got the job in the first place. He's an amazing, at least, he's an amazing teacher, researcher. The thing is it worth it? I would say yes. I'd say get rid of all those people he abused. They had it coming.
What?
It's
No.
Sometimes you got a brilliant mind. If they're referring, you have this happen in all sorts of walks of life. Coaches go through this. Oh, this one coach is terrible to work with. Hey, he wins games. Yeah, that's why he's still a coach. Other than that, he's a terrible human being.
Right. So this is the big question, and there's a big moment right now, especially in science, with regards to just how people treat each other with there's a lot of harassment in workplaces around the world. In science, we know that there are hierarchies and power trips and harassment and bullying and all sorts of things that go on. And the question is, how much will we continue to take? How much ego is going to be allowed into the scientific lab, into, Lander, responsible for the Broad Institute and basically the world's foremost genetics laboratory. He built that. And he's and his ego is even to it. And maybe it wouldn't have been where it is if he hadn't been such a jerk. But he pushed and prodded and made it happen. But when there's a zero tolerance policy, doesn't matter if the only way you can get your work done is by forcing people to do it, by making people feel bad about themselves. Maybe you should try something else, because there are other ways to lead. And you can lead by example, you can lead by kindness, and you can lead by allowing people to do what they're good at.
I think this is exactly the point, Kiki, is that this is something I often am shouting about, is that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you'd be a good manager of that thing, right? Yeah. And so you can be smart, you can be a consultant on science, you can be part of a panel on science, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily the material to run a department or a team or a cabinet or any of these things. And I think that's the piece here, is that so much of our society is built on elevation based on kind of achievement, right? But often that elevation happens without the appropriate training and changes in expectations when you manage people. And so this is maybe kind of a comeuppance from that. Maybe this is something that needs to be taught in higher education alongside the discipline that people are learning, is how to actually handle people.
Well, I think this is a huge problem in the sciences, because you go from working in a laboratory, being a graduate student, being a postdoc, doing your own work, working for other people, and then suddenly one day you go and get a job as a professor at a university, and you're given your own lab. You pretty much will have had zero training unless you paid attention and took on the roles of a lab manager during your post-grad period. You will have had zero training in how to work with people, in how to do any of the things that people in business normally do. And now one of the issues here, though, is Lander comes from he's a mathematician and a businessman. And so he actually does come from the business world where, people are rude and mean and ladder climbing and they get things done a lot. But is our priority as humans win at all costs? Doesn't matter who you step on the way up. Doesn't matter who you hurt to get where you want to go. I don't know. It's a very interesting moment for our country, for considering where we've been politically, and also for, I think, science. But I think the bigger question here is, what does this not just say for science in general, but what is going to happen now that Biden's science cabinet position is empty? Mm-hmm. How is it going to change the cancer moonshot? Well, Lander wasn't incredibly involved in that, so maybe it won't change that at all. There was going to be the ARPA-H, which is like a new biotech initiative. And is that going to fail now? Don't know. Like there are a few things that are very much in question at the moment. Okay, let's talk about fusion for a second. Let's go move on.
This is an amazing story.
Yeah, following on the heels of this last month, well, actually, it's like back from August, September, of the National Ignition Facility, the United States Laser Fusion Project, announcing that it had reached a big threshold for power production after making some tweaks. The European Jet Fusion, it's a tokamak facility, experiment has doubled its output, just reported that they have doubled it to 12 megawatts, 59 megajoules for 5 seconds. This is a world record for fusion energy production. And basically, it says to the world that they're on the right track for the ITER project, which is the larger European tokamak fusion project, which is expected to be a power production facility for Europe. So fusion, tokamak fusion, using magnets to create a hot plasma. And the exciting thing about this, I mean, they need to keep their magnets cool is what they need to do. They could only run it for 5 seconds because that's how long it took for the magnets to overheat. And once the magnets overheated, it stopped working.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh no.
5 seconds, that seems like a really long time, though.
On the scale of this kind of power production, it's a really long time. Yeah.
Because some of these reports of like there was that laser one, it's like, I got this. And it was like a nanosecond. It was like, well, that doesn't count. You couldn't even. All right, ready? Tell me when to start. Okay, it's over. Wait, what? At least you got to do a 5 count on this. That sounds proper.
One of the things that people are hoping fusion will be ready for is climate change prime time. You know, can we use fusion to help us out of this climate change predicament that we are in? And the answer is no. No, we can't.
You have to cool everything constantly.
Well, right? It's not just that, but I mean the energy that the stuff they're using to make this happen is deuterium. You know, the deuterium comes from seawater. It's, you know, it's not prolific in seawater, but it's seawater, and there's a lot of seawater. And hey, we want to do salination or desalination for water purification for drinking water. So, we've got all this water. We should get out the deuterium, and there's all this supply. It's great. And the cooling, that'll be fine. Once you get the fusion running, it'll manage itself. The energy will be enough that it'll be able to take care of all those things. However, it's still going to be like 20 or 30 years at least. I mean, we're probably not going to see ITER really working or NIF even really working for a couple more decades. And then it comes down to building fusion power plants, which again, takes time. And so if we need to be really fixing stuff within like the next 10 years, it's out. It's out. We need to fix stuff now. And so fusion can be a future game, but we need to change our game now. So we keep putting all our ducks in these future. I have too many now. I'm mixing my metaphors, and it's getting messy.
Putting too many ducks in the future pond?
We're putting ducks in I don't know.
In the egg basket, but they're eggs, but they're also ducks. It's definitely anything to avoid fixing efficiency and just general use reduction.
Exactly.
Can we keep everything like we're doing it, but what about nuclear? No, what about fusion? No, what about it's okay, but you can't overhaul the whole system is the problem.
It's going to take time to overhaul the nuclear plants. It's going to take time to build the fusion plants once we get it really working. It still's not really working, but it's getting there, but it's still going to take time. We don't have that time. So that is the big take home is this is great, but those are future ducks.
Future ducks.
No, it's future ducks.
Is that a t-shirt?
I would like a future duck on a t-shirt. Yes.
I saw that movie as a teenager.
Back to the Future Duck. Part 4. Tell me about the future of Martian lasers in space, Justin.
Yes. So, laser-powered Martian spacecraft has been discovered. Mars, yeah. What is it good for? Well, one thing, future humans. We might be putting our future humans in a Martian pond. The question isn't
With the ducks.
isn't if we're going to settle Mars, but when we settle Mars, we will be able to get packages from Earth in a respectable amount of time. SpaceX envisions a human trip to Mars would take 6 months with its chemical-powered rockets. But 6 months is a really long time. It's half a year, in fact. Also, half a year of a sustained space faring can really rack up radiation exposure in the astronauts or even the payload that you're taking to Mars. So, 2018, NASA challenged engineers to design a mission to Mars that would deliver a payload of at least 1,000 kilograms in no more than 45 days. Engineers decided that the problem was too hard and offered no solutions. No, of course, that's not what happened. Engineers came up with solutions. That's what engineers do. The harder the problem, more creative they get to solve them. And engineers at McGill University, Montreal, designed a propulsion system that would run the craft off of space lasers. And then it would have to aerobrake when it got to the Martian atmosphere. So McGill's concept is called laser thermal propulsion. It relies on an array of infrared lasers based on Earth, 10 meters in diameter. So we're talking, I think one of the examples was it's about the size of a volleyball court. Laser array, combining invisible infrared beams, each with a wavelength of about 1 micron, creating a total of 100 megawatts of laser being fired, which is about the equivalent of 80,000 U.S. households, or less than 5 seconds of superpower generation. So maybe we can just use it for this. The spaceship orbiting would already have to be up there, right? So you'd have to already have this craft in space, in some sort of medium Earth orbit. And the laser would then be firing at the back end of the craft, filling up a chamber that contains hydrogen plasma. So when its core is heated up to 40,000 degrees Kelvin, 72,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hydrogen gas flowing around the core gets up to about 10,000 Kelvin, 18,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and will be expelled out of a nozzle, creating thrust enough to propel the ship away from the Earth over an interval of about 58 minutes of being hit by this laser. I would have some other slight onboard thrusting that would allow it to maintain its alignment with the Earth so the laser can keep hitting it. So when the beam stops, beaming's over, payload zips away at a velocity of almost 17 kilometers per second relative to the Earth, fast enough to go past the moon's orbital distance in a mere 8 hours. When it reaches the Martian atmosphere in a month and a half, it will be traveling at 16 kilometers per second, which, if you're not familiar with kilometers per second, that is about the same as 960 kilometers per minute. Mars in only 45 days. Did it, got it, good. However, problem is, once there, it's moving at 16,000 meters per second, and it's presenting a different issue. How do you stop the thing?
Lasers on the other end?
Exactly. You would have to have lasers at the other end, and then a different reverse thruster of the same thing is one of the possibilities. But that also requires all the power generation of 80,000. How is this stuff? So if you don't have that on Mars yet, they need to use air brakes, which apparently is a thing that's not just in Looney Tunes. Right?
Space brakes. Well, I guess air brakes when you hit the Martian atmosphere. Is that the idea? You just hit it really fast.
Yeah. So they can't use chemical propellant because apparently for that it would use 96%, 94% of the weight of the vehicle, the original 1,000 kilograms that NASA was asking for. It would all be fuel used to do a chemical reverse thrust. So that's out. So yeah, the lasers is the best option, but you already have to then have the infrastructure on Mars. Mm-hmm. What they used is the aero capture or air braking with a single pass around Mars would basically mean jamming the craft into the Martian atmosphere. Spaceship would experience deceleration of up to 8 Gs, which is a lot. That's a lot of Gs.
People are going to love that.
I was thinking about all the Gs for acceleration first. And then all the G's of slowing down. Oh my god!
Oh my goodness!
So at least the acceleration, it sounds like you get about a minute of buildup on that acceleration. You're gonna be done decelerating very quickly. I don't even know if it's gonna be a couple of minutes, because a couple of minutes of 8 Gs is maybe you make it. You know, you're trained. You're wearing a G suit and all that. Maybe you make it. Maybe you don't.
This really doesn't sound like this is for humans. It sounds like it's for cargo.
So for cargo, it's a fantastic. But the thing is, they really want it for the humans too, because then you don't have 6 months of space radiation exposure.
Yeah,
there's
and
another
also
problem.
you get to do tourism.
Yep.
Is the real thing, right?
Tourism
is that it's not a one-way trip.
Well, it might be, because it might just be a penal colony. Sure, if Mars is going to be. It could be the next Australia. Large heat fluxes on the craft also are a little bit of a problem. Right now, the heat from that air braking would exceed our thermal protection system materials. However, it is below the heat that would be experienced by the materials that we have that are under active development that look like they'll be coming out. So it looks like we've got on the horizon thermal shielding that would be able to handle that. And this is a quotey voice of Emmanuel Duplay, who's the lead author of the study, who worked on the project for over 2 years at McGill. Laser thermal propulsion enables rapid transport missions of 1 ton with laser arrays the size of a volleyball court. There is that volleyball court reference to the laser array. Some laser electric propulsion can only do with kilometer class arrays. So much smaller array than other previous proposals that were in this ballpark. Great advantage is that it's extremely low mass to power ratio, far below even those cited for nuclear propulsion technologies, due to the fact that the power source isn't on the craft. The main power source is down here on Earth.
Or on Mars.
Yes, or eventually on Mars.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, I mean, we already have these solar sails that are working with the idea of just using light to propel them. We've got crafts that are already working according to that technique. And so this is just taking it a little bit different, a different tack on it. And the intensity of laser light. Pew, pew, pew. Martian space lasers. Okay, Blair.
Yes.
What's your next story? What's your first story? Oh my goodness. Yes.
My very first story of the day. It's all about spider silk. We know that scientists have their eye on spider silk for a lot of different purposes. But what if you could use spider silk as a platform to grow nerve or muscle cells?
Ooh,
wait, so this
sounds
has
like
nothing...
how superheroes get started.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that angle. I was trying to get the superhero angle with it. And so, yes, we will grow the superheroes on spider silk.
Exactly. Yes. More spider silk than men. So spider silk, it's non-toxic. It's biocompatible. It attracts virtually no microbes. It's tough. It's stable, and it's biodegradable. All that to say, it's a perfect thing to stick in your body to grow tissues on. So researchers from University of Bayreuth, Germany, have optimized a natural product in more than one way simultaneously using a biotechnological approach. They made a 2-sided spider silk fiber, which provided damaged nerve cells or muscle cells with a platform for growth. One side of the fiber is suitable for cell adhesion, and the other side is used to attach factors or other substances. So one of them was formed from a spider silk protein in which the team substituted a single amino acid. And by doing that, they reversed the net charge from negative to positive of that protein. And the surface of that material then became more attractive to cells. So that's your spot for cells to grow on. And then the other side, they added the amino acid cysteine. And in the addition of cysteine, it makes it possible to employ click chemistry, which is a method for functionalizing materials where the reaction partners react so easily with one another that it's as if they can be clicked together. So all that to say, they were able to make this fiber in a way that it was perfect for muscles to grow on there. They're excited by electrical impulses. And so they were able to figure out this perfect kind of spider silk scaffolding for cells.
Wow. That is really groovy.
Mm-hmm. This is so interesting. I mean, we're looking at so many different platforms for growing cells, right? We've done 3D printing. We've got, so there's a lot of plastics.
Got the bleached pig pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've taken organs from other animals and just cleared them of everything except just the cellular substructure and just said, here, now you can grow cells. But this is really interesting because it'll allow the cells to grow more organically and flexibly.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and there's no danger of any foreign material getting in. For the most part, it doesn't start with something that's not compatible, and it is naturally kind of repellent to microbes. So in theory, it should be a perfect opportunity to grow cells on. So yeah. So they made some crazy two-sided spider silk for your body.
Gold coated spider silk.
Yes. Oh, yes. I forgot to mention the gold coating. Yes. So one side was coated with gold nanoparticles. That was that click chemistry, which made them electrically conductive.
Gold. This is amazing. I love it. Yeah. Thank you for this.
Of course.
We will grow our superheroes on gold-coated spider silk.
Yeah, forget adamantium-laden skeletons. My skeleton is covered in spider silk, man.
I love it. And let's see, my last story for this intro portion of the show. How do we get pathogens? Some researchers have been digging into what has led some microbes to become pathogenic to humans specifically, because maybe in the dirt, these organisms are not pathogenic, but then when they get into people, they are. And so it's a difference of environment, yes, but what is it that actually teaches them to do the things that harm humans? And the example from this particular study that was published this last week is that there's with COVID, there is the black fungus that has been outbreaking in COVID patients where the immune system is depressed and then a fungus gets in and causes a fungal infection that can be very, very dangerous and difficult to treat. This fungus is caused by a fungus that grows in the ground, Rhizopus, and Rhizopus is normally not a problem at all. It's just a normal fungus. It's in the dirt. It lives with plants and it's in the dirt and it's happy. But there's a predator that is after Rhizopus. It's an amoeba that's called Dictylostelium. Dictylostelium, the amoeba, comes amoebaing after the fungus.
It's
And
the only way to describe that.
This amoeba's coming. And Rhizopus is like, what do I do? So what does Rhizopus do? It partners up with another bacterium called Ralstonia. Ralstonia lives inside of Rhizopus and can hide from the amoeba as well, because the amoeba is really after everybody. And everybody's like, what do we do?
Amoeba.
Ralstonia gets nutrients and protection from Rhizopus, but the thing that Rhizopus gets is a toxin that Ralstonia produces to protect itself from the nasty dictyostelium. Dictyostelium. And so Rhizopus in the dirt, when it is partnered up with this little bacterium, can protect itself. And it doesn't succumb to the amoeba and everything's great. But you put Rhizopus with Ralstonia in a person, and suddenly that toxin is incredibly toxic to people. And so the problem is not necessarily these organisms, but where they are and when they are. So understanding these ecological connections is really important potentially for helping human health, because now we know that if somebody who presents with a Rhizopus black fungus infection, if we treat the toxin, you can potentially let the immune system dig in and do the work it needs to do to rid the body of the fungus.
Neat.
Yeah. So it's an ecological connection.
That's really cool. That's a situation where these two buddies are worth way more together than the sum of their parts to our deficit. But it's definitely one of those things where you're talking about ecology. That's exactly it, right? Is organisms' interactions creating something wholly new and different. And yeah, I know it's scary and sad for people who are infected, but I also think it's kind of cool.
Exactly. I mean, it's what these organisms have done teaming up together to survive and exist in dirt, But yeah, so it's this multi-level interaction that is fascinating. And we have to remember that we exist in this world of complex interactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important for healthcare too, right? So especially, I understand when you're seeing something over and over, especially right now, you're dealing with COVID patients in healthcare settings. You're trying to just kind of deal with symptoms as much as you can, because the sheer volume, right? It kind of, you don't have time to stop and think and go, I wonder what happened when this bacteria and this fungus hang out. So it's pretty wild to think about as from a human health standpoint, that you have to consider the ecological connection of these things.
No, we want to consider everything one-off, isolated in a box.
Just kill the fire.
That.
We like to categorize.
Don't give us another layer of complexity. Don't give me interactions between things, producing things that the individuals didn't produce on their own. No.
Forget everything you knew about human health. No, never mind. Sorry. Don't forget. Don't forget it all. Just add this, please.
You are a special snowflake. Oh my goodness. All right, everybody. This is This Week in Science. Thank you so much for being a part of the show this week. We're so glad that you are here with us. Why don't you bring a friend next time? Tell a friend about TWIS, because this science needs to be shared. All right, let's come on back for our quick COVID update.
That's the correct sound effect. That's for sure the right one.
All right. In COVID news this week, let's talk about a new CDC statement. If you've heard the news, lots of states are dropping mask mandates right and left. They're like, woohoo, our numbers are down. Everything's great. Everybody's had COVID, so we're all protected. The CDC director has come out and said, no, please, no, we're not there yet.
That was the press release.
Don't rush to the finish line yet. Yeah, so because we are in a global situation, even though there may be states and places with lower case numbers and with higher vaccinated numbers, and also of people who have been infected, so higher numbers of people who are protected. There are lots of places that still are suffering. And here in Oregon, I think also in California, case numbers are dropping, but hospitals are still full. And we just passed 900,000 dead across the country, which is not something we want to get an award for. This is something that we have brought on ourselves with our human behavior. Just remember, we can all make choices to protect everybody else. So, keep an eye on the case rates wherever you are. When cases go down below about 50 people per 100,000 per 7-day period, from 50 to 100 is considered high by the CDC. And once you're below that, you start getting into more moderate zones of infectiousness within or transmission within a community. But I think it's something like 99% of counties across the United States have high levels of transmission at this point in time. So as much as we want it to be done, it's not done yet. And let's not drive it faster to the finish line. Let's try and keep our hospitals from filling up. Let's let this thing kind of peter out on its own. We've done the masking, we've done the social distancing this long. We can keep doing it just a little longer. Just watch those case numbers, keep an eye on things in your local area, and use your good judgment.
This is such a strange situation where when we're doing something that's working, we choose that as a signal to stop doing that thing.
Mm-hmm. It's working. I don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah. My brain was really having a problem with this today because it's, oh, great. We did this thing and it dropped cases down.
We're not
Still
done.
Higher than they've been in most of the pandemic.
They're at the levels of the peak from last year.
Yeah,
right
and we're considering that like good
Yeah.
because Omicron levels were insane 4 weeks ago, which
Yeah.
was not that long ago. Remember, COVID is around for 5 to 10 to 14 days, depending on the variant.
Yeah,
So
10 to
4 weeks
14.
ago, that's
Yeah.
2 cycles. That's 2 cycles of infection. What
Yep.
are we doing? It's so the county
We are
where I
being
work,
human. We're being human, but
my God.
it's, yeah.
the county where I work is the one Bay Area county that is not dropping its mask mandate next week, and everyone's very mad.
Mm-hmm.
And the public health official who made the decision said there's 2,000 cases a day of COVID still in that county.
Yep.
I'm not dropping the mask mandate. I'm like, you know what? All the power to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. Let's
I'm sick
protect
of wearing
each
a
other.
mask at work, but
We're
you know
all
what?
sick of it.
It gave me TMJ, but I'm still
I know.
wearing it.
Hey, everyone. Blair wears a mask, even though it gave her TMJ so badly that she couldn't come to the show last week.
Yeah. So
just a little bit
But
longer.
I'm still wearing a mask so I don't kill anybody. Thank you.
Another aspect of the ongoing pandemic becoming endemic is the question of what are we going to do about booster shots? And are we going to want to have variant-specific booster shots that we will take every 6 months or so? Well, there is some new data out from Moderna, which is actually really interesting, and in which they have done a monkey trial. And in their monkey trial, using an Omicron booster shot. So they had monkeys that had been vaccinated with other Moderna, with the original Moderna vaccine. And then they either received no vaccine, no booster shot, an Omicron specific booster shot that had been formulated specifically for the Omicron spike protein, and a regular Moderna additional booster shot. They found that there was no benefit to the Omicron specific shot in these monkeys. They also are testing this on humans. We're waiting to see if this is verified, but so far this completely lines up with this idea of what's called original antigenic sin, antigenic imprinting, that people have been talking about and worrying about, with the idea of like, oh, if we just get too many shots, what is our body going to be responding to? And so researchers think that's what's happening, is that even though the Omicron variant is different enough to cause breakthrough infection cases in vaccinated people, the body, when you give a booster shot, it doesn't care whether it's the other spike protein or the Omicron spike protein, because there's enough stuff that's similar that the body's just like, I know what that is. And it just brings up its old B memory cells.
Hmm.
And it says, I've already got this. And it makes antibodies, which it's supposed to do. And that's fantastic. But it's not making Omicron specific antibodies. So the question now is, what will we do in terms of shots going forward? Definitely, this needs to be played out and tested in people. And we need to look at a couple of different types of booster shots. But what this suggests is that we might not need to have lots of different variant shots as it evolves and mutates. And that we may just need to kind of, on a regular basis, get a booster. So boosters will be good still, but it might not need to be a special booster.
Is it still a booster if it's an annual shot? Like, is our flu shot considered a booster?
Well, it's not a flu shot booster, but
You know
it
what I
is
mean?
similar.
Just
I think
curious.
because the flu virus reconfigures itself differently enough every year that our bodies just like, I don't even know what to do with this. And so our bodies are always responding
familiar.
Yeah, but so I guess that's my point. If our annual COVID shot is formulated for the latest variants, let's say, so
and it could be, yeah.
If it is it? This is just a silly question, but is it still a booster then, or is it just your annual COVID shot?
That's at a certain point in time. It might be just your annual COVID shot. I don't know the lingo. I don't know the lingo. This is something that this needs to be worked out by the public health people.
Branding.
So that we know.
Something the public health group has been excellent at is
Tell us
branding throughout the pandemic. So they need to figure that out. Anyway.
I sense some sarcasm.
No.
Wow. No. Let's see. And beyond this question of boosters and original antigenic sin, which is such a dramatic term for a scientific concept, there was a Pew Research survey out this last week. Pew wanted to know how the public felt about COVID-19, the United States COVID-19 response. And what we find is after 2 years, people are really upset. A lot of people are confused. And the big number is that the majority of people are pretty much confused. 60% of U.S. adults say they felt confused as a result of changes to public health officials' recommendations on how to slow the spread of coronavirus. And this is up from last summer. So people were confused and they're more confused now. So they're note to officials, you're communicating poorly.
What did I just say?
Yep.
Right. And also, part of it is communicating poorly. A big part of it is also failing to have the solution.
To have a plan. Yeah.
Just failing. No, just failing to have the appropriate solution at every point along this journey we've been on.
And to change the story as it goes. Yeah.
We could have just done that hard shutdown, but it's like nobody wanted to be the adult in the room and say, no,
nobody wanted to take the hit.
We just need to go to bed now. We're not going to get better. The tantrum or whatever is happening in our country is not going to. Everybody just needs to sleep.
Here's $500 box of groceries, rent relief, and a video game. Go have fun.
We are lucky in this report, however, the survey, which isn't necessarily representative of all U.S. adults. They say that they found 78% of U.S. adults from the survey said they have received at least one dose, 73 being fully vaccinated, 66% of fully vaccinated adults saying they received an additional COVID-19 booster shot in the last 6 months. But this does fall along partisan lines, however, where 73% of fully vaccinated Democrats say they've gotten a COVID-19 booster shot compared with 55% of fully vaccinated Republicans. So these partisan differences are a big issue. And especially when it comes down to what we will require vaccinations for in the future. So range of activities from proof of COVID-19 for air travel, 58% generally favor that, which is was split between Democrats and Republicans. 76% of Democrats favor requiring vaccination for a sporting event or a concert. 26% of Republicans for that. And
but they still want to go. Stop.
They still want to go. They
Stop.
still want to go. Yes, they still want to go to a sporting event or a concert. Yes. Yes. So there are some really interesting numbers about all of this, which, do give us insights into the divides that are affecting our public health issues in this day and age, as we hope that we can just let this Omicron wave crest and crash.
The problem we have in public health with nobody doing the things that will protect each other from this is the same thing the planet has the problem with humans. It's like we're like, gosh, what's with these humans? They're just destructive, and it's like they don't care about their own sustainability, let alone the rest of us. Oh yeah, that's how the rest of the world life forms have been thinking about humans this whole time. Yes, that's what you guys do, if you hadn't noticed.
Yay, humans! This is This Week in Science. We're done with COVID. At least this section of the show for the time being.
I'm done with it.
Done with it. Thank you for joining us for another episode of our show. If you are enjoying TWIS, please head over to our website, twis.org, and click on that Patreon link. You can help support the ongoing production of this show week in and week out. If you choose $10 or more per month, not even per week, per month, we will thank you by name at the end of the show. We really can't do this without you. Thank you for your support. All right, coming back now with more This Week in Science. And oh, wait, I know what time it is. It's the TMJ hour. Oh, wait, no. No. It's Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
Well, we were just talking about the perils of being human. Let's talk about animals. Animals, they're true.
Not human.
They're fair. Non-human animals.
Yes.
Unless they're big, fat cheaters.
Oh, no.
I want to talk about cheating animals. It's a study from Duke University. Not cheating, like extra
marital
monogamous copulation, but more about just cheating, like a scam, if you will, a swindle. So the story actually reminded me of something that happened. Well, I should say it reminded Brian. I was telling him about it. And he said, you know what that sounds like? That sounds like the Ghost Army in World War II. Have you heard of this? Either of you? This was inflatable tanks.
This is the British. The British.
Yes.
Inflatable? What?
So this was actually...
yeah.
So this was something developed in the U.S. Army in New Orleans, and then it was shipped overseas. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so the Ghost Army had 24 missions between May 1944 and 1945, and they were kind of tracking the Nazis, and then they would set up all these inflatable tanks. And so the idea was that on reconnaissance missions or from far away, it would look like they had way more tanks than they really did. Now, did it cost nothing to make them? No, definitely cost something. Did it cost nothing to set them up and move them around? No, it definitely cost something, but definitely a lot less than building and moving real tanks. And that's really what this story is about a swindle, a trick done by animals in a similar fashion. So animal weapons are often large, clunky, heavy appendages. Think about antlers on deer, lobster claws. They're metabolically very costly for the animal to maintain. They have lots of muscle because they're used in combat. And so some animals can spend 40% of their energy budget for a day just maintaining themselves sitting there doing nothing, especially if they have these large combat-based appendages that are very costly. And so this study wanted to look at snapping shrimps and one species of fiddler crab. They wanted to see how these animals were developing these huge claws and if that was impacting their metabolic output. So it turns out mussels, like I was saying, require a lot of energy to maintain, but chitin, the main component of a crab or shrimp's outer shell, is mostly inert. It takes energy to make it, but once produced, it costs almost nothing to maintain. The same goes for keratin, which are things like rhino horns, bird feathers, and of course, our fingernails. And so these initial kind of investments to make this big flashy thing could actually end up being very advantageous if they're not spending a bunch of energy maintaining it after that. Just build it and you're done. And so for each species, they looked at the relationship between weapon size and the ratio of soft, expensive tissue to hard, cheap exoskeleton. They found that the larger the weapon, the higher the proportion of exoskeleton it contained. So the muscle didn't grow proportionally, leaving larger weapons with more cheap crunch and less expensive muscle. The idea is their opponents have trouble assessing whether they're bigger, stronger, or simply have a giant claw that's worth nothing. And so the reason that this seems to work is that, as is the case with many animals that fight with each other, the battles are often won by intimidation. A lot of the time they never even come to blows. And when they do escalate to full-blown violence, they're rarely lethal. Also, specifically if you're looking at shrimp and crabs, if a crab claw gets ruined, they can pull it off and grow a new one. So it's advantageous to them to kind of try to trick other crabs into thinking that they're more formidable than they actually are. And so the example that they gave here in the article was if there were two knights face to face, one had an average sized sword and the other one had a massive fear-inducing sword covered with blood. The knight with the medium-sized sword runs away, but it turns out that larger sword covered in blood was plastic. They never know, right? And so that is exactly how these crabs get by. So this is a good example of a species kind of through evolutionary chance, there being a greater advantage. They said, figure it out. And then I was like, no, let's be real. So really what's happening is, out of chance, some of the claws had more chitin to muscle. The chitin to muscle ratio was higher in the chitin end. And so they were just as good at scaring off other crabs, but they put less energy into that claw and therefore had more energy later to breed, to move, to eat, to do other things. And so there was a large evolutionary advantage to taking this tack if the output is the same. If you scare away a crab no matter what, doesn't matter if you're faking it.
Well, it does matter, because in the end, that becomes a driving, like you said, it's a driving selection factor. So
Right.
You have more fakers.
Right.
So what does this mean for the spring crab feeds? Like, how do I choose?
Yeah, so don't necessarily pick the giant claw, because it might be really thick with chitin and not have a lot of the meat inside.
Fair.
Yeah.
The crab might have been faking it.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I wonder how much more often this happens. Like, what other features on different animals would be like this? I mean, we know that, horns on deer are big signals. But those aren't necessarily muscularly attached and have it's a different tissue need. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how many other traits this would potentially connect to.
Yeah. Inflatable tanks as one. Anyway, moving on.
Pretty soon it's just going to be inflatable crab claws.
Yeah, why not? So moving from cheaters to doctors, would you see a chimpanzee doctor?
Well, know.
No, I would not see a cheater doctor either.
At this point, I'd consider it. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I've not been super impressed with some of the healthcare advice over the years.
So scrape your knee, maybe
recent?
Rub a bug in it. Yeah. Break your leg.
Perfectly acceptable.
No. Rub a bug in it.
Wait. What?
Sounds like that could work.
What?
Bruise your face. Rub a bug in it.
Blair.
I thought about trying that before.
Rub a bug in it.
I keep hearing you say rub a bug in it. Are you meaning to say that?
Yes, I am. So a study from Osnabrück University and a Zuga Chimpanzee Project has for the first time observed chimpanzees applying insects to their own wounds and the wounds of conspecifics. So Dr. Chimp saying rub a bug in it. They investigated the behavior of a community of about 45 chimpanzees with a special focus on their social relationships, interactions, and disputes with other groups, their hunting behavior, tool use, and their cognitive and communicative skills. And by chance, they found one of them regularly capturing insects and applying them onto open wounds. Then they kept looking and found 22 events, mostly involving individuals applying insects to their own wounds. But in many other cases, they would apply the insects to the wounds of others. So, self-medication, where individuals use plant parts or non-nutritional substances to combat pathogens or parasites, has been observed in the animal kingdom before. It's been observed across multiple animal species, insects, reptiles, birds, and mammals. But this is the first time, as far as these researchers know, as far as we know, that an animal has been shown to apply something topically in this way. So this is a very specific thing, external application of animal matter onto an open wound. Has never been documented.
So now ancient chimpanzee secret. We need to see if it works.
Right. Okay, so you're jumping right to the heart of the matter here. So the bug might have an anti-inflammatory or antiseptic property, or it might be that such a behavior has no beneficial consequences and is instead part of local chimpanzee culture. Just as this is a biting remark from the researcher. Just as a large number of medical treatments are in human societies, which we know is true. Crystals. Anyway, moving on. As the next step, the researchers do aim to recover
homeopathy.
Oh yeah, there you go. So the next step is to figure out exactly what Justin was asking. They want to recover remaining insect parts that were used to apply to wounds, to identify the species, one, because they still haven't figured that out, and then
figure out if it is there's a selection process on top of it, not just any bug. Can't just use any bug. You need specific bugs, or will any bug do it? Just any bug in a storm.
Yes. So that's one. Is it a particular bug? And then two, carry out bioassays to investigate the potential pharmaceutical properties. What specifically in the bug are they using, if anything? And then they also want to focus on the social dimension of this behavior. Who are the main actors? Who are the main receivers of treatment? Are there a couple of kind of designated doctors in a chimpanzee troop?
And then, does everybody get to play doctor?
Does everyone do it? As well as the social learning process to allow for transmission. How does a young chimp learn to do this behavior? Is it specific to this group of chimps? Does it happen elsewhere? Does it happen in bonobos? There are a million questions.
So many questions. And did these chimpanzees happen to come in contact with humans? And are they copying a behavior they saw in humans?
Yeah. Like, did a human get a bug bite and then rub something on and the chimps missed a step?
All right, there are so many questions about that leap from just kind of a happenstance use of plants, like putting particular herbal plants in nests to, certain plants have anti-pest properties, like in the compounds that are in their leaves, and so a lot of birds, rodents will put these kinds of things in their nests. But when did that start happening? How did it start happening? Is it learned? Is it how do you know? Is it just that's just what grows in the area and it just is accidental? Or, and then how does that go to a cultural, societal step? Like,
yeah. And
this
bonus,
is big.
will we discover a new pharmaceutical from this? Chimp show
Ooh,
us
we can all
something?
rub a bug on it.
Yeah.
I can't wait for my rub a bug on it spray.
Yeah. Liquid bee for what ails you.
Do you have a bug bite, a cut, a burn? Are you in pain, itching? Rub a bug on it spray just for you.
Love it.
Thank you for bringing the story. I love the stories that bring more questions than answers.
Those are my favorite kind.
It's like, ooh, we get to report on this for a long time to come.
Yeah, you really cracked something open here. I love that.
A bug. You
cracked a bug open, squirted it on, and rubbed it down.
Crack a bug on it. My goodness. All right, Justin, would you like to tell us some stories now? Bring us from the animal corner into Justin's lack of sleep time.
So, Homo sapiens, that's what the current modern human scientists call themselves. And this version of the upright ape emerged in Africa over 300,000 years ago. Really became the complete anatomically current modern human around 195,000 years ago. First early modern humans outside of Africa we have found are Israel around 185,000 years ago, possibly Greece around 210,000 years ago. There's modern human remains that have been documented in East Asia 80,000 years ago, Australia 65,000 years ago, and then Europe, however, it took them a lot longer to find Europe, even though you would think Europe is much closer to Africa than a lot of those distant places. Current modern humans don't show up until somewhere in the 45 to 43,000 years ago, and that's based on just 5 isolated dental remains from 3 sites in Italy. 43,000 years ago. Okay, most recent Neanderthals. Yeah, most recent Neanderthals, 40,000 years ago in Europe. That's the most recent. So there's like this, it's like there were Neanderthals, boom, and then there's humans. And that's kind of it. Records show the earliest modern human remains and then the transitional technologies of those humans that they brought to Europe are found above layers where they find Neanderthal activity. So there's no mixing of these layers. There's no then mixing evidence of the cultures. It is impossible to point to any likely encounter between the two populations in any particular region of Europe for any amount of time at all. Until now. This is Grotte Mandarin, Mediterranean, France, reveals the earliest known arrival of modern humans in Europe to date. This is between 56,800 and 51,700 years ago. And it shows evidence of successive replacement phases. Occupation by Neanderthals, occupation by modern humans, occupation by Neanderthals again, occupation by modern humans yet again. And that took place over the last 1,000 years of Neanderthals' existence in the area. So this is not just a site that has, close to, but this is jumping back and forth for a very long time. The site yielded nearly 60,000 stone and bone objects and tools. It's quite a big number. As well as 70,000 animal remains that were dominated by horse, bison, and deer. There were hominin fossils, 9 dental specimens representing a minimum of 7 individuals. Ancient DNA analysis was carried out on the horse fossils, not on the human fossils. Reason being, they basically wanted to assess whether the level of DNA preservation was good enough to merit destroying the fossils.
Right, because you once you go to analyze it, you've destroyed bone, you've destroyed tooth, yes. You can't go back.
Yeah. They want that data, but the poor preservation signal from the horse material made them decide they're not going to sample the remains, the hominin remains at this time, which is extremely important. And just by itself, this is an interesting story because and that's the site that you got up there on the live stream. If you cycle down to that, you can see all the stone and bone tools and stuff. It's quite a prolific site for artifacts that they have discovered here. It's just incredible. So one of the interesting things then is here's part of what archaeology has to always decide what to do. We can look at a thing, and everything you look at is destroyed. Every time you do a dig, you're destroying evidence in a sense. You can only dig it once. You can only record where things were, where the layers are. Parts of these sites had been looked at in the past, but in the long past, and it was such a shoddy job, they couldn't tell the layers of Neanderthal tools from these other, they now realize are current modern human tools and instruments, because the work hadn't been done in a methodic way. You destroy it when you look at it, for one. And then to do the DNA analysis, having to destroy something that they can get maybe morphological, forensic type of information out of still and can look at. Mm-hmm. Maybe not worth it yet. So that's the thing. Also, methods of extracting DNA, methods of doing this are improving as years go by. So the researchers are like, we have the thing you want to get your hands on to do this, but our technology isn't there yet. So they're preserving that information for future archaeologists or researchers to look at by not attempting the moonshot with the DNA extraction, but rather waiting for that to be more commonplace.
But it's really great that they're able to at least do the dating to the point of being able to look at all of these artifacts and everything and say, we've got human, hominid, and we've got Neanderthal. They're all mixed together, but this human stuff has definitely been here. So we know that humans were in Europe before we thought humans were in Europe.
And so in this one, it's actually not all mixed up. In this dig that they're doing, they've gone back and they've gone back layer by layer, and they can see transitions over time as it went back and forth between human and Neanderthal. One of the other things that's sort of remarkable is the standardized small points. Some of these are measuring only 1 centimeter in length, 3 centimeters. They're tiny points, and they're a very big difference, substantial technological difference from the Neanderthal technology that's found at the site. They were given a unique cultural attribution of Neronian technology because they resemble tech found at another site. But until now, that Neronian industry, it's the name of another cave where something similar was found. That's where it got this name, and it's very similar to that technology. That is, but this is much earlier. This is much earlier than that other site, and so there might be a technology link to these modern humans and other modern human settlements previously in different
Right.
areas who up till now they haven't really known for sure that technology was from modern humans, and they didn't know who made it. They just had been finding it, and it's like very unique compared to the Neanderthal technology. So now there is also this path that can sort of be followed and traced to sort of see
Ancient
where these
human trade routes. Yeah.
But it sounds like a fantastic site. The number of artifacts they have to study, the number of the tools that are present, the changing layers over time, showing that back and forth interaction for the first time, and the oldest current modern humans in Europe.
We've been there. We've been there. Not just Neanderthals. People were there. We were there.
Yeah.
So cool. What's
And
your
then
next story?
the last one I have is this is not much of a story. Basically, there's a study that finds health apps could help old people with everything and anything from sleep to diabetes, but most of those older adults don't use them. And the reason they discovered that these people aren't using these medical apps is because they're old people. That's
Really?
Well,
I mean,
no, there's like a whole page of words I could say about percentages of people who it's like more than half they'd be interested in using apps that do all the things that apps are out there for. I mean, you can even link them to diabetes monitoring that you're wearing. You can link it to your blood pressure. You can link to all these sorts of things that help monitor. You can then take that to your doctor and say, hey, here's what I've been experiencing. And none of them are using it. And what they're finding is, compared to a decade ago, most older adults didn't even own smart devices, the tablet thingy, the phone, whatever. Now that number has gone up substantially, and yet they're still not using it. So they need tech help. Maybe. Also, part of it is there's, I guess, a fear of having that health data out there. Look, if you're already an older adult, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Nobody's tracking your blood pressure. No. Big tech isn't looking to see what your glucose level is. That's not what that's about. Nobody cares.
I mean, we could talk forever about the sociology of this. I think a lot of it is that this is also the demographic who is most likely to be swindled by online scams. And so I think there's a huge fear because they didn't grow up with the internet. They're not trained inherently to be able to tell what a reliable and reputable source is to pump information into versus something that's going to try to steal your bank account information.
Yeah.
So I think there's an inherent fear because they feel like victims, which they often are the ones who are being targeted as victims by apps and the internet.
Well, there's that, and then there's, also just picking up the phone. I mean, I don't know if my dad's watching right now, but I mean, he's very into apps and his smartphone and all the things, and he's on his phone all the time, just like everybody with these mobile devices that are attached to us all the time. But there is also, just the adoption, the full adoption, and what are you really doing when you adopt it? Are you using the smart device as just a phone and for texting and for Facebook? Or are you using it as like the journal of your life, the thing that connects you to everything, which so many younger people are doing. So there's, the variation in how you use the technology.
Yeah, that's the thing that occurred to me is it's going forward. That's probably going to be less of a thing.
Yeah. I don't know, but yeah.
And a third of them, though, but it was a third really expressed interest in wanting to use a lot of the capability, want to have the capability that a lot of these apps provide, but we're just unaware of it before the survey. Like there needs to. It seems like there needs the medical profession that the rub a bug in it chimp can have a rub a bug in it app where you like put in your symptoms And he's like, what do I
Perhaps it is
do?
this.
And hit the button, and it can just say rub a bug in it over and over again. But the medical profession is missing huge amount. If they're not telling patients about this, if they're not including some sort of health monitoring apps for their patients to connect to their medical record, to connect to their doctors. So the doctor's like, don't even come in. I just looked over. Your blood pressure's been fine. Whatever it is.
I think that's the thing. The point that kind of keeps coming up is public health communication.
Yeah.
So if the people would be interested in using the app, but they don't know about it, whose fault is that?
Well, so will the app replace doctor visits that insurance companies can make money off of?
Right? That insurance will
be super cynical about it, but I can tell you right now on my phone, I have 3 different apps from my healthcare provider for different things.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And
I do not.
It's annoying because I think it should be one app. But I do have 3 apps on my phone. That's the thing, though. I'm not going to download a 4th health app right now.
Anyway, I have stories.
Yeah.
What you got, Kiki?
I have some science stories. I want to talk about brains.
Shocking.
Who wants to talk about sonogenetics?
What's a sonogenetic?
Sonogenetics. Yeah. So it is an area of genetic manipulation of nerves to eventually affect behavior, behavioral responses, memories, even. That instead of using a technique like optogenetics or invasive injections, that researchers could use ultrasound to stimulate nerves and get them to do what they want. And so this whole story of sonogenetics came about because it was an accident, really. A researcher was playing around with some C. elegans and discovered that when they put a particular kind of when they put ultrasound over the C. elegans was like and flopped around and didn't like it and wanted to go away. So then they turn the ultrasound off and the C. elegans is like, that was nice. And they're like, okay, what happened? They turn it on, ultrasound, of course, C. elegans, it's a little worm, so it's not making these noises, but I don't know how to visualize a worm flopping around auditorily.
I think that's exactly what they would sound like.
Yes, so the C. elegans started this process back in like 2015. This little nematode was pulsing under ultrasound stimulation, and then they were like, okay, let's figure out what it is. These researchers, they spent months and months and months and months. Nothing. They couldn't figure out what molecule, what protein was responsible for making the response to the ultrasound in the worms until finally, ta-da, one day, happy, they nailed down it's a particular protein that is called TRP1A, transient receptor potential A1, and it's a membrane channel that allows ions to travel across a membrane, but basically it stimulates the nerves in these worms and gets them to move. So the idea is that TRPA1 is a response to toxins or to painful stimuli, to stimuli that are dangerous. And so this particular molecule, they have looked to see whether they could stimulate it in other organisms. And so indeed, they have discovered that in this paper they've just published in Nature Communications, they have sonogenetic control of mammalian cells that using exogenous TRP1A channels. So they were invasive a bit because they injected the CRISPR stuff into the brain to get these TRP1A channels into the neurons in the brain for these mice, which we wouldn't want to do in the future. But and they're looking currently for other molecules that won't just turn on a nervous response, but also turn it off because they can't necessarily turn it off once they've turned it on. In these mice that they injected this receptor into their brains, they were able to put ultrasound into the over their heads, and then the limbs of the mice, the muscles tightened up and the limbs shook. So they were able to create movement in these mice by adding this protein to the brains of the mice. And maybe one day we too will be able to use ultrasound to stimulate behaviors in animals and people.
So this is what I was going to ask. I was going to say, go ahead, put this in a box, shove it in a storage facility. It's a bad idea. Except, I'm sure there's actually a good application of this. Can you tell me what that would be? Because I'm having trouble figuring out what it is.
So for right now, it would be research applications. So essentially, at this point in time, there would not be a, hey, let's go use this and put somebody underneath ultrasound and then have something happen, right? We don't want people to walk through an ultrasound beam and suddenly start convulsing. You don't want something like that.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't. Not yet.
No, yes, we do. Yes, we do. We need a human kill switch. We do. We do.
So maybe that's what it is. But at this point in time, what this is that optogenetics light only goes so far into the brain. The blue light that they're using, the wavelengths that they use, can only travel so far through the skull and the neural tissue in the brain to actually have the effects that it does. And we've been using optogenetic research very successfully for a number of years now to figure out what different proteins do and what different areas of the brain are for. And so optogenetics has been great, except it's been limited. And so ultrasound can get deeper into tissue, can go places that other techniques cannot. And aside from the injecting stuff into the brain of the mice, it's non-invasive with needles.
Right. Aside
from that, yes.
Yeah, so I think this would be very useful in society. Because it comes a point every once in a while.
Turn you off.
It's a less lethal version than all of our less lethals are. It sounds like you just somebody's doing the wrong thing somewhere. You shoot them with the ultrasound beam, and they stop.
Yeah. So where this will go is still definitely up in the air. Its applications are still very limited. They only have an on switch. They don't have an off switch. So if
important.
Yes.
Quite important.
Very important. So they're looking for other molecules that could be used, other proteins that could be used for different purposes. And so this is kind of the interesting thing. What molecules naturally respond to ultrasound and are also biologically active and important within, physiological systems? It's a big question. I don't know. Do you know? We want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. And then moving on from sonogenetics, let's use sound to influence the genes in the brain. Researchers, this is a little bit nicer story, but not. Anyway, researchers at Riken CBS out of Tokyo, they have been looking into social isolation, loneliness, social contact. What are the aspects of the brain that manage our will to connect with others? And they also published their study this week in Nature Communications, reporting on social contact-seeking behavior in female mice. They focused specifically on female mice because most other studies to date have only used male mice.
Of course.
And male mice in their social interactions are very different behaviorally than female mice.
What?
Male mice, what? Yeah. So male mice, it's hard to know. Very often their interactions are agonistic, especially when it comes to male interactions. Whereas there are many, many examples of different species of mice, house mouses being one of them, where female mice, they breed in groups, they have their babies together, they help raise the babies all together. And so that social contact is also part of maternal instinct, maternal nurturing. And so the reality of how the brain works and how the instincts work for motivating social contact between males and females in mice, and possibly also in humans, but this is specifically in mice because of what they've seen in the mouse breeding and maternal instinct and the way that they do things. But humans, because we also have maternal instinct, we just in Western countries now kind of do things on our own. Historically, it was all very social. But there could be a link between these things. And so these researchers were using that as their motivation for digging into this study. And so, yes, they took mice and they put them together in cages, and then they isolated them and they put them into different groups. And they wanted to find out, okay, what was happening in the brain. We know oxytocin is a big part of connecting, and that's in males and females. So oxytocin, dopamine, these things are all very related to these instincts. However, what they found is in a particular area of the brain of this kind of hypothalamic pre-visual cortex area of the brain, they found a specific protein called amylin peptide. Now, amylin peptide is produced by the pancreas, and it's also involved in digestion and insulin production, but it's also produced in the brain, and specifically in this area of the brain. And what they saw is that when these female mice were grouped together socially, amylin mRNA levels, the messenger RNA that goes to create more amylin, was nice and high. They isolated the females, amylin mRNA dropped. And when they brought the female back together with the group, amylin mRNA went back up again. They also found that if they had like a whole group of females who knew each other, amylin RNA was higher than if they had like a few that knew each other and a couple of strangers. So that kind of, they're thinking that it has to do with how much social contact they have. They also found that there were behaviors that the females did when they isolated a single female from the rest of the group, where the female, if it was in complete isolation where it couldn't see any other females, it was just isolated. But they had a particular paradigm in which they had a metal divider between the other group and the individual. And it started out with the single female trying to reach and connect with the females on the other side that they were isolated from. And during that time, the amylin mRNA was very high. The behavior of the contact seeking was very high. The female, they describe this as becoming depressed. The female became depressed, and that amylin mRNA decreased, and the contact seeking decreased. So what they're saying, what they're saying is they think that, and still causation is not completely proven here, but the idea is that this protein, and we know that it's active in other mammalian systems, that this is specifically relevant to female contact, social contact. And so if it is active in humans, this suggests that, potentially there are targets for people who are depressed, who are isolated, who are feeling lonely. This is a potential research direction to look at this amylin peptide to see whether or not it can be a therapeutic target for increasing people's urge, their motivation to seek out social contact and stimulation. So, maybe it's metaverse contact, I don't know, but it just not being alone. And because we know that being alone too much, social deprivation leads to mental deprivation, leads to pruning of your neurons, leads to depression, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that can affect mental health and physical health. So it's a very interesting directions.
It's too bad there's nothing going on in society right now that would be relevant to this conversation.
Yeah, there's another study out. I didn't bring it, but people are looking at levels of loneliness, and it's like levels of loneliness are the highest they've ever been.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. But I was also thinking about the experiment with the fact that they took, social mice, and then they said, oh, you can't be together anymore. And they split them apart, and the mice struggled and wanted to be together and tried. And I'm like thinking of that as like the first part of lockdown when everybody was like, we can do Zoom calls.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's great. We're going to connect. It's going to be awesome. And then finally we were all just like, oh, okay, I'm just done.
I'm just going to watch Netflix until I run out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there are a few parallels there for sure, but it's, discovering how, it might be this very specific detail of there's this peptide in the brain that gets activated that is involved in making us want to be around others. It could be it's very specific kind of detail, but at the same time, the implications of it go further, into the human behavior, into the human psyche, into mammals, social mammals in general. Why are we social? Why do we want to be social? Women become depressed more often than men. So, is that related? Is this something that we don't know? Is it related to amylin, maternal instincts? This system that was created to motivate females to find social protection and bonding to provide a better environment for the rearing of offspring. So for more maternal success, but it also comes to, it has changed to a social situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a feeling it has to do with men being largely throughout history, if not to this current day, pretty much detestable creatures. And so the brain needed to do some sort of coaxing internally behind the scenes.
Yeah, the female coaxing.
Even want to be around us. Just to keep, the whole evolution thing, life going.
Let's do this.
It's like, yes. we know he's not great, but here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make you need that contact anyway. Even though beneficial, we've got our own definition of that. So you're going to want to hang out with him despite everything. Have you seen him? Yeah, we have. We're sorry. We're going to flip a switch that makes you want to hang out with him anyway.
We'll use ultrasound to do it. All right. I think we made it to the end of our show. So fun to have you both back this week.
It's great to be
I did enjoy talking to everyone all by myself last week, but it is so much more fun with the two of you.
Yeah, how were your hormones last week when you were all by yourself?
I wasn't alone. I was with our TWIS community.
That's true. Touché.
I was with a whole bunch of people, and we were having a really great time. So I think we're done here. We're gonna finish up this show with some big thank yous. Thank you to Blair and Justin. Thank you both for coming back this week. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone for joining us for this episode. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the show. Shout outs to Fada. Thank you for your help on show notes and show descriptions and social media. Thank you to Gord and Aaron Lore and everyone who helps to keep our chat rooms happy, healthy, fun places to be. Identity 4 for recording the show, even though you're not doing that this week. And Rachel, thank you for your editing and your assistance. I'm looking forward to doing more with you there. And I really do want to say thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Richard Badge, Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, Pierre Velazar, Ralphie Figueroa, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Karen Tazi, Woody MS, Andre Bissett, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunn, Vergard Shefstad, Hal Snyder, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Maddie Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Ragan, Don Mundus, Stephen Albaran, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Shauna Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Rami Day, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Bob Coburn, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Slough, Jim Drapeau, Sarah Chavis, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele, Ulysses Adkins, and Jason Roberts. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. And for those of you out there who are wondering how you can support us on Patreon, well, you can head over to TWIS.org and click on the Patreon link and get started. On next week's show,
we will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time, or Thursday, 5 a.m. Central European time. Broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels and from twist.org/live.
Hey, do you want to listen to us as a podcast? Maybe while you bop your newborn babe to sleep? Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, you can get your friends to subscribe as well.
Yes, for more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website, www.twist.org, and you can also sign up for our newsletter.
You can also contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or me, Blair, at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into the inside of a health app that no one will check.
And if you're still not sick of contacting us or listening to us or interacting with us, you can also find us on the Twitter, where we are. It's another app, isn't it? At Twist Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes through the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science.